Breast milk is the best thing that you can ever do for your baby. There is a lot of evidence to think that it is tailor-made for the baby's specific requirement. In other words, breast milk of mother A will be different from breast milk from mother B.
If someone is incapable of breastfeeding for whatever reason and they give their child formula, does it put the child at a very big disadvantage?
Breast milk is living. It has cells in it, you have bacteria in it. It's a whole microsystem. Whereas formula milk has been sprayed, dyed, processed, it's dead. There's something which I call sustainable breastfeeding.
Are there any lactation boosting diet tips that women should follow? If you are a mother-to-be or someone who's just delivered, I insist that you watch this podcast. This podcast today is about breastfeeding. I have with me a pediatrician, Dr. Chandan Ray, and he is going to educate you on breastfeeding and everything that eases your way into your breastfeeding journey. So go watch, please give me your comments, and I would love some feedback. Dr. Chandan Ray, welcome to Infinite Health.
Thank you. I'm also excited to be here.
So you're so renowned as a pediatrician because all the couples around me that I know all take their kids to you. And before I even start, I want to tell you this story. Like a few years ago, I think 5 years ago, we were doing this clinical study for prevention of breast cancer across some villages. And I happened to speak to a patient. And so we were just talking about lactose and breast milk, and some conversation happened. And she just casually told me that, in that village, they breastfeed children till the age of 5 years. And I don't know why I was so shocked, because I just come from a surrounding where, leave 1 year, 6 months is also a lot. Is that normal? Can you breastfeed till the age of 5?
I suppose you can, but most people in the modern world, the busy, fast-paced modern world, would try to breastfeed for a year or, maybe 2 years. After that, at least in the urban areas, it goes down. A lot of women who are breastfeeding till 5, they probably, it's more a comfort feed. Very little milk is actually going in, but it's a way of settling the child. Right. I'd be interested to know what were the breast cancer rates in that village, because breastfeeding is known to have a protective effect on the incidence of breast cancer.
Very low actually, because it was an anomaly that we were even thinking about, because it had one of the lowest incidence of breast cancer
and
in
the
that
highest
specific
incidence
village
of breastfeeding.
Yes, and the highest incidence, because it just got me thinking that do villages in India all across, because I don't know, I don't have the statistics, but it just got me thinking of whether villages in India do breastfeed for a longer time compared to urban areas, and whether that has more benefits. Because I really wanted to drive that conversation to the fact that what are the advantages of having breast milk?
Right. I don't know whether I think it's probably likely urban women breastfeed less than rural women, because if you look at the sales of infant milk formula, they're largely concentrated in urban areas. So either in rural areas, they're either breastfeeding or using some sort of unmodified animal milk like cow's milk or buffalo milk.
Right. So then what are the advantages of breast milk then?
Right. Breast milk is the best thing that you can ever do for your baby. That's point number one, and we need to emphasize that. It will give a lifelong, advantage to the baby. Now let's go into one by one. Advantage to the baby. It's an ideal source of nutrients. Breast milk is a very dynamic fluid. It changes, the composition changes as the baby grows. There is a lot of evidence to think that it is tailor-made for the baby's specific requirements. In other words, breast milk of mother A will be different from breast milk from mother B. So that's number one. It's a dynamic fluid. In fact, now, sooner or later, you will probably find there's studies which show that the composition for breast milk in a male child is different from that in a female child.
Really? Male and female are different?
Yes, and that is why sooner or later you're probably going to see formula tins coming in a blue and a pink variety also in the future, not too long in the future. Okay, now what makes breast milk so special? Number one, it's an ideal source of nutrients. It's also not only nutrients. You can provide nutrients from various sources, but breast milk is a living thing. I compare breast milk and formula milk like planet Earth and planet Mars. Both are round and rocky planets, but that's the end of the similarities. So both milks are white and liquid, but that's the end of the
Everything else is
similarities.
different.
Everything else is different. And what is the most important difference is breast milk is living. It has cells in it, it has bacteria in it. It's a whole microsystem, microecological system. Whereas formula milk has been sprayed, dyed, processed, it's dead.
Right.
So that the first thing that is we need to understand. So these living things that are present in breast milk, be the bacteria, be the cells, be the proteins, special proteins, this is what makes breast milk so great. It not only confers nutrition to the baby, but it also protects the baby from infections. It modulates the immune system.
Right.
It makes it more appropriate. The immune system has a tough job. It's like a person sitting on the boundary. You have to let the legal citizens come in, but the same keep out the aliens out.
Right.
So similarly, the gut and the immune system, the gut has a problem. They have to let in the good stuff in and keep the bad stuff out.
So what I understand from your conversation on breast milk is that it, number one, is completely different from all other breast milks. So like one
It's a
particular,
unique.
it's unique. It's unique. It's a unique signature to a baby. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, you said that it increases the immunity of the child. Right? It sets a base for the immunity of the child. And number three is that it has specific nutrients and minerals which are catered uniquely to the child.
Yes.
And number four, which I really want to take the conversation forward with, is the microbiome that you were speaking about.
Yeah, but just before we do that, I want to just emphasize on another thing. Breast milk has something which are called bioactive proteins and peptides,
Okay.
and they are functional peptides. They also influence how the gut, the immature gut which a baby is born with, becomes a mature gut of an adult. It promotes a better building of that intestine, and that intestine is central to lifelong health. So that is another very important thing. So the three things are the nutrition, the immunological, and the developmental issues, the bioactive peptides, and these are not present in formula milk.
Right.
Formula milk is like a one size fit all. Whatever mother A, mother B, mother C, all of them have the same formula. Whereas if you're breastfeeding, mother A, mother B, mother C would produce different types of milk, tailor-made to the requirements of her baby.
So, but why would someone use formula? Is there any specific reason why women would use formula when they have an option of breastfeeding?
You see, there are a lot of women who, despite best efforts, cannot breastfeed. So in that case, formula is useful. Formula is what is termed a necessary evil. Okay, breast milk is best, but if you don't have breast milk for some particular reason, then obviously starving the baby is not an option, so we have to give formula.
So what exactly?
And formula is better than giving unmodified animal milk.
So, but then what exactly is formula made of?
Formula is made of, the base is cow's milk, and then what happens is manufacturers, using the advances in biotechnology, they subtract a lot of things from it. For example, they bring down the protein. The protein that is present in cow's milk is more in quantity. It is qualitatively there are differences, so these have to be adjusted. For example, the breast milk contains what are called whey proteins. 60% of the whey proteins are in the form of whey proteins, but in cow's milk only 12% is whey proteins.
Right.
So whey enrichment has to occur. The caseins have to be decreased. The electrolytes are too much. And then things have to be added which are normally present in cow's milk, which are very important for brain building, things like iron, things like DHA, ARA. So these things have to be added. Nowadays, we've gone a step further. You put in probiotics. Some formulas even have prebiotics in it. Okay, so all this is very, very important, and it has improved a lot, formula, but it's still light years away from the real thing.
Right, because this is what I wanted to understand. Like, if someone is incapable of breastfeeding for whatever reason, and they give their child formula, does it put the child at a very big disadvantage, or maybe later in life they can cover up?
That's an interesting thing. And I don't want to, I'll just quote a study for which was done in Brazil. It involved 6,000 children and it was continued for 30 years. They had two groups of children. One was those who were breastfed for more than 12 months, and the other was a group which had breastfed for 1 month and then formula fed. Now, formula in those days were much different from the formula that you have now. But surprisingly, it was seen children who were breastfed had higher IQs, they achieved higher educational levels, and their cumulative earnings were at least 30% more than their formula fed counterparts.
Right.
So, breast milk does impair a lot of benefits, especially in the cognitive, the brain perspective. So the children are probably a little bit brighter.
Because I really want to drive this conversation to the challenges that women face for breastfeeding.
Right. So I deal with mothers every day. Now, some of them come with a preconceived idea because the obstetrician is not very open in discussing these breastfeeding issues.
Right.
He's mainly interested in the obstetric water. So much of the preparation for breastfeeding, the mental preparation, the education is not done. So most mothers are rather fazed by the idea of breastfeeding. They think they will have no life. There constantly will be a milking cow, and the baby will be suckling. But in real life, it's not like that. There's something which I call sustainable breastfeeding, just like you have sustainable development. So what is sustainable breastfeeding? You breastfeed for about 90 minutes a day. That leaves you 22 and a half hours for something called life. The 90 minutes you divide into, say, 10, 12 feeds of about 7 or 8. So it comes to around 90 minutes or so. And that should be enough. Now, the basis behind this is something because people think that the longer they breastfeed, say, for example, if they do a 30-minute breastfeed, the baby gets double the milk. That's not what happens. Have you seen a tube well?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you pump a tube well, what happens? A lot of water comes out and then it's drop, drop, drop. Breast milk is like a tube well. People think it's like a corporate, the tap in your kitchen. Constantly, you run it for half an hour, it will constantly run at the same rate. It's not like that.
Right.
It's more like a tube well. So at the end of 7 or 10 minutes, 90% of the milk that is there in the breast would have flown to the baby.
Right.
Okay. So if you double that to 15 minutes, after that you can do 30 minutes, but say at the end of 15 minutes, 30 ml has gone in. I'm just saying an example. At the end of 30 minutes, maybe 32 ml have gone in. But the baby has now suckled about 28 ml of air because the baby is obviously doing something over there. The mother is not a fool. Obviously, the baby is making some sort of suckling movements. So what happens is the baby is now bloated with gas, will throw up, probably be colicky, pass a lot of wind, pass a lot of stool, and mother is at her wit's end. She then thinks, I'm not producing enough milk. And she exhausts herself, so the 30 minutes becomes now 45 minutes.
Right.
In the end, she just collapses in a heap. So that is what I call, you just try too hard. Don't. Put a brake on it.
So you're saying that apart from that fear psychosis that I won't have a life, I'd rather give formula to my child.
That is one point.
That is more on point. And then the second point is where, because
you're
of stress,
trying too hard.
So it's basically stress is inducing the mother's not being able to.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the other problems arise. She gets cracked nipples. She has backaches.
So is it also possible that you can do mixed? Say, for example, if the mother's not being able to produce enough milk, can she say that, let some of the milk come from me and some from formula?
Yes, that is perfectly possible, except for the fact that if you're doing the mixed feeding and the child is feeding from a bottle, then what happens because of the nipple confusion thing, you will find that the baby sooner or later graduates to full bottle feed, and the mom has to pump out the milk, and that is, it's a slippery slope. So once you introduce the bottle, really, you probably have about 2 or 3 months left where you can breastfeed. After that, the baby will be fully formula fed.
So what about those breast pumps that have been used, that they use to store baby, especially for working women who sort of...
That's okay, but remember one thing: pump milk is not the same as directly breastfeeding.
Right.
A lot of those cells and proteins and bacteria that I alluded to earlier, they get stuck on the tube in the glass of the bottle. So it's not as replete as the original thing, as vis-a-vis those items really. The cells, the proteins, the immunoglobulins. But yes, it is a good halfway house. Because one has to, balance the needs of modern society. Women need to get back to work. Just because they have a baby doesn't mean they can drop out of the workforce. So yeah, a pump is definitely
a good viable option.
good viable option. But pumps have to be, they have to be cared for carefully. They have to be sterilized. So that requires against education. And the source of education is very limited.
I also wanted to ask, maybe this will sound like a stupid question, but what is the amount of milk that can be produced in one breastfeed on an average?
Now, a back of the envelope calculation is you probably need about 5 ounces per kg per day.
Per kg per day?
Yes. So if you have a 3 kilo baby, when the baby is 1 a month, 2 months away, you probably get about 450 ml. A human mother can produce up to 700, 800 ml.
Per day?
Yeah, per day. So so if you have twins, then it's a big problem. Human beings are not designed for twins.
Right.
So, and twins are accidental actually in a human being.
Right.
Unlike dogs and other animals where you have multiple babies in a litter, human beings are designed only for one.
This is very interesting because if, say, someone has twins, are they at a biological disadvantage then?
I think so. But recently I met a mother who was breastfeeding both her twins for a long time.
Right.
Both twins, 100% breastfeeding. So it can be done. You see, nature adapts. Nature adapts. One of the characteristics of nature is nothing's written in stone. Everything is a fluid thing.
Right. So I just wanted to shift focus on what are the advantages to a mother then when they are breastfeeding?
Well, you already alluded to one important advantage: diseases of the breast and ovaries. If you're successfully breastfeeding 2 children, your incidence of these diseases goes down drastically. But in the short term, the act of breastfeeding produces a lot of hormonal changes in the mother. There's plenty of oxytocin available, there's plenty of prolactin, and that makes a mother more happier, bonding with the child. Probably reduces the risk of postpartum depression also. So, and there are studies which show that it probably reduces the incidence of type 2 diabetes, even heart disease. And it helps the mother lose weight. Breast milk, you probably burn about 700 calories a day, 700, 800 calories a day, just by breastfeeding.
No, because this is very interesting because there have been so many studies in the past that I've read which says that if you are a mother who's breastfed a child, your incidence of breast cancer and all gynecological cancers reduces by some 60-70%. And that was even for men, which I didn't understand why, but probably that's a conversation tabled for later. But what is the exact postpartum nutrition diet that women need to follow for a healthy baby?
I think they need to follow a normal, healthy diet. Probably, rich in fruits, vegetables, grains, whole grains and pulses. There's nothing specific to pregnancy. What they need to drink is plenty of water, because milk is 98% water. The rest of ingredients of breast milk, which are so important to the baby, will be leached from her body whether she likes it or not. So if she wants to maintain a healthy body self, she will have to eat healthily. There is a general tendency to eat a lot of fatty things in pregnancy and the japa period and the period around the delivery. All that will do is make you fat. It is not going to change the composition of milk. You cannot change the composition of milk by outside influences.
Right, because I had one of a guest in my podcast who said that women get a lot of ghee and gyan during the whole japa period, because I really wanted to understand, are there any lactation boosting diet tips that women should follow?
No, I think apart from drinking plenty of water, there's nothing really that is scientifically proven. A lot of medicines are used. I would tend to avoid them because they may have unpredictable side effects. Basically, if you analyze the risks versus benefits, it doesn't come out beneficial to the mother. The foods that are there are a lot of indigenous suggestions, but if you look at them very carefully, they're all very watery sort of things.
Right.
Something like milk and shabu. So it looks white. So this thing is, you produce enough milk. The bottle gourd, again, a very watery vegetable. So actually, ajwain pani. Okay, so these are very, very watery substances. Instead of ajwain pani, you could have beer. I don't think there's much difference in it.
Right. So what happens when cow's milk is given to children before a certain age? Like, how is that different from breast milk or formula milk?
Okay, so we have 3 categories of milks over here. We have breast milk, we have formula, which is halfway house, and we have no whey animal milks. Animal milks are totally different. Each animal produces milk which is tailored towards their young. So a cow will produce milk which is tailored towards the needs of the calf. What does the calf need? Big muscles and a small brain. Okay, human beings, exactly the opposite.
Right.
So cow's milk is not a natural food for a baby. Point number 1. Number 2, cow's milk has a lot of innate disadvantages. It's high in protein. The curds that form are basically casein based, and they're very difficult to digest. Once they digest it, they liberate the wrong sort of amino acids, and these amino acids are what we call technically branch-chain amino acids, and they do 2 things really. They increase the weight of the baby, but in a wrong way. It makes the baby overweight because the baby is now producing more fat cells, and that will set the baby up for problems later on in life. A cutoff, if you ask me, is 1 year. But preferably, if person can afford it, I would say give the child formula feeds till 2 years because it has a lot of iron in it. But at the same time, you can use pasteurized whole cow's milk to make things like dahi, chena, and things like that. But it has to be pasteurized. It's not from your neighborhood friendly goshala with unpasteurized cow's milk. That's dangerous. Okay, because there's a lot of tuberculosis in cattle, and we do see a lot of bovine tuberculosis affecting babies in the glands and gland TV and things like that. So the milk has to be pasteurized, and the babies need a lot of fat, and so you can't have homogenized double tone milk. You have to give the whole cow's milk that is available. All dairy manufacturers provide you with that. The homogenized, basically what they do, they remove the fat, the milk fat, and replace it with vegetable oils.
Right.
To keep the fat content up. So that's a no-no because the brain needs those fats. The brain is a fatty organ. Okay, so human milk fats are totally different from cow's milk fats, and that's why these children who are breastfed probably do much better because they have a better blend of nutrients which help the brain to develop.
You said 2 very interesting things I really want to talk about. The first thing is this fat cell theory, that the number of fat cells increase.
Yeah.
Is that true for
Yes,
cow
it
fat
is.
babies?
So that's called the early protein hypothesis. So it is felt that children on formula, and definitely children on cow's milk, the amount of protein that is fed to the baby is excessive, and that induces what are called metabolic changes in the baby, and it makes the baby produce more number of fat cells, and later if you have more numbers, they will increase in size. Formula milk over the last 20-30 years, there has been a tendency. See, breast milk has 1.2 grams of protein per 100 ml. Whereas cow's milk has about 3.6. Okay, so that has to be brought down. And formulas with the lesser amount of protein show growth patterns vis-a-vis that of a breastfed mother. So bringing down the amount of protein is very important. But unfortunately, you also have to supply all the amino acids. So you have to change the character of the protein. You have to subtract some of the amino acids and replenish them with others. Otherwise, you get deficiencies in certain amino acids. So it's a very technical, difficult thing. So that's why formula milk, is you can give formula milk, but never cow's milk before 1 year.
Can we not give cow's milk at all? Can children be, say, vegan completely since they are, born?
I suppose they can, but usually some degree of cow's milk is probably necessary. It gives you calcium,
Okay.
it gives you some protein, especially when you're not breastfeeding. Your breastfeeding has stopped. So I think moderate amounts of cow's milk is okay, but it has to be moderate. There is in Indian culture, there is a tendency to think a lot of cow's milk is much better. Cow is revered as the mother.
Right.
So lots and lots of cow's milk are fed, and that's not really a good idea. But moderate amounts, I suppose, it's okay.
It's fine.
A lot of children don't like the taste of cow's milk, or maybe they have some transient lactose intolerance and they don't want to drink milk. I wouldn't force them.
Because
They can
there's so
get
many...
calcium for green vegetables. Where did the cow get the calcium?
Right. Because a lot of influencers and health people and, coaches who talk about how children don't have to be fed on milk at all, that they can still have very healthy lives. I mean, that's what I wanted to understand.
Well, if you look at evolution, human beings were not designed to, no animal is actually designed to consume milk after the initial portion.
Right.
After they're weaned, there's no place for milk. You don't find the cow stealing the milk of a donkey and feeding it to the calf.
Right.
Okay, but human beings love that sort of thing. Now, if you look back as recently as 5,000 years ago, this was about the time when domestication of cattle occurred. And initially, it was quite funny. I was reading in the one of these texts, and they were basically saying in Egypt they used to drink the blood of the cattle rather than the
Milk.
And that is still even nowadays in the Maori and the Maasai in Kenya. They also bleed the animals and drink the milk, drink the blood, but not the milk.
Wow.
Yeah, so milk has been associated with a lot of problems, really, and I think the time has come really to really seriously consider whether you really need to drink milk.
Right.
But a lot of drink do is as a recreational drink. Put it in the coffee, put it in the tea. So it's to his own, really.
Right. No, fair
So,
enough. I just wanted to understand that if it's medically viable in that sense.
It's if you look at, as I said, from the point of evolution, we're not designed to drink milk. That's why we have lactose deficiency. Now that is treated like a disease. I'm lactose deficient, but that is the default mode.
That's actually normal.
Yeah, that's normal, because if you're not designed to drink milk after your 2 years, why would nature waste resources making an enzyme called lactase when you're not going to use it?
That's such an interesting point of view. Imagine, we all call lactose intolerance as an intolerance.
Yeah.
When it's actually, that's
The
what
default
normal...
mode.
Your default mode is
Yeah.
lactose intolerance. If people have become lactose tolerant, maybe they've evolved in some way, I guess.
Yeah. So what happened a few years ago, maybe a few thousands of years ago, after we started domesticating cattle and there was milk available, some sort of mutation occurred. It allowed those people to, drink the milk of the cow. The extra protein made them stronger. They were more likely to survive. So when they survive, they propagate their genes. So nowadays, if you look at the world, most people are lactose tolerant rather than the intolerant. The intolerant are now labeled as the abnormal ones.
Right.
Okay.
That's a very interesting point. But then, do babies need water?
No,
if they're
babies don't
breastfed?
need water because milk is 98% water.
Right. So if they're breastfed, then they will not need
No
water.
additional water is required.
Right. I mean, just to summarize this entire conversation we had on breastfeeding, are there any other tips that you feel women should follow in terms of breastfeeding?
No, I think they just go with the flow and not overthink the problem.
Right.
As I said, most of the time they worry about less amount of milk. Less amount of milk does not matter. So for example, the baby stomach is not full. That's equivalent to charging my mobile phone. I charge it to 50%. Okay, fine. So what do I have to do? I have to charge it more frequently. You don't have to fill your petrol tank in your car to the brim all the time. It means you have to go to the petrol pump more frequently.
Right.
So it doesn't really matter. If the baby's not full, don't stress. The baby will probably demand it half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. You have another chance to feed the baby.
Right.
But don't try to interfere with this delicate balance, and that is what happens. The moment you start putting in formula with a bottle, the delicate balance goes, and the whole lactation thing crumples like those house of cards.
Right. Dr. Chandan Ray, thank you so much for this conversation. I think we have covered everything that we need to on breastfeeding, and thank you so much for coming here and having this with me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.